this is Emily. Welcome to the video. Today we are going to talk about how to read a French wine label and what does the information indicate. As we have quite a lot of things to mention today, we are going to focus on the still wines. For the sparkling wines like Champagne, Clément, Pétillant Naturel, etc., we are going to come back to it in the coming videos. As an old world wine country, France has its own traditional appellation system. On the label, most likely you won't be seeing the grapes variety mentioned, but only where it is produced. This is the main difference with the New World wine, which always indicates the grape varieties on the label. Also, there are different classifications and different terms. I know it can be a headache. In the following, we are going to look at several important components in a French wine label. First is the producer's name. Sometimes we will see the word domaine, chateau, or just the winemaker names or the other words. So what does it mean actually? Domaine, which is more related to Burgundy. It means the wines from vineyards that are owned and farmed by the estate. For example, the famous producer in Burgundy, Le Roy. They have Domaine Le Roy, which produces wines from their own vineyards, and also Maison Le Roy's production by buying grapes from other vineyards, which purchase wine, must, or grapes and make wine from this under their label. If you see the word chateau, which is more related to Bordeaux. Chateau means a castle of a house of nobility in French. It is a tradition in Bordeaux to call every winery a chateau, even if no castle is present on the property. If the wines are bottled at the winery, most likely we can find this kind of words on the label. Maison bouteille au château, Maison bouteille au domaine, Maison bouteille à la propriété. The second important component is vintage. So vintage means the wine is made from the grapes only harvested within a single year. And as you all know, price can have a very big difference between different vintages. So we talk about the good vintage, the bad vintage, but what is a good vintage? A good vintage means there are plenty of the sunshine during the growing period, means that the grapes are more likely to reach the full maturity. A suitable period to grow at optimal ripeness level. Too hot, however, and the grapes can be growing too fast as the sugar level raises fastly and the flavor profile doesn't catch up, and there are risks of getting sunburned, resulting in bitter tannins. Some rain is usually good, helping to keep wines hydrated, but too much rain means they're easy to rot and cause diseases. You see, that's why a good vintage is rare and it directly affects the quality of the grape and the harvest. And if you're interested to check the vintage, I recommend you can go to the Wine Spectator and they have the vintage charts for different countries there. Saying so, it's more important to choose a good winemaker's production that they take good care of the vines and make good wines even if they're weak years. If we see a wine released in the market within 1 year, that means that the wines haven't been aged in barrels or a long period of the bottle aging. We can consider the style will be more fruity, crispy, and ready to drink. There are also producers who do the aging in oak or bottle aging to give wines more complexity and flavors before release. There are 3 levels in the appellation system, from VDF, Vin de France, IGP, Indication Géographique Protégée, and the top level, AOP, Appellation d'Origine Protégée, or you will see AOC, Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. Is the top level of the system. This legally defines that the wine came from a specific regulated region. Each region has its own rules for allowed grapes, growing conditions, and minimum quality. We can divide the AOP into 3 levels, from regional, sub-regional, and village or commune. This labeling behavior works well because there are more than 200 grape varieties in France, and many of the wine regions blend grape varieties together. So when you look at the label, it's important to pay attention to the AOP. It can be your best clue to determine what grades are in the wine and to understand what is the style in it. To be honest, we have to admit that it is not a very user-friendly system, especially for the customer who is not very familiar for the whole system and the wine appellation. But it's still a good indicator to show you the tendency of what style of wine that you're going to get and the possibility of getting a great wine. IGP is often a larger area with slightly fewer regulations than AOP. And the third level of the appellation system is VDF, Vin de France. This is the most basic regional quality labeling term for wines from France as a whole. Wines with Vin de France can originate from anywhere in France or be a blend of regions. And the list regulations on the limitations. Vin de France is often labeled by grape variety. Back in the day, having a bottle of the Vin de France can be a sign of having a wine in low quality. But nowadays, more and more winemakers, they don't want to follow the rules. Like they want to use different grape varieties in the region, or they want to do natural wine, like using a different winemaking method, then the wines will be labeled as Vin de France too. Vin de France can be no longer become a quality indicator. Whenever I taste a Vin de France, I'm very interested to know what is the flavor because it can always become a surprise. Moreover, when we see the region we know very well where it locates, we can basically have a guess on the style. Generally speaking, places that are closer to the equator is hotter. There are also factors like altitude, ocean currents, and soil type that can make a difference. We can generally say that South France is hotter than North France. Generally, if we get a wine from south of France, we can guess that the grapes are easier to get fully ripened or even true ripened there. So it can be more likely to have a wine with more tropical or jam flavor with higher alcohol. It is not always the case, but it could be a reference and help us to guess that what will be the style of the wines that you're getting. Number 4. Alcohol level. The one basic concept is during the fermentation, the yeast will turn the sugar in the grape to alcohol. When the sugar level is high, the alcohol level is also getting high. With a higher level of alcohol, we can guess the maturity level of the grape is good, and it has less acidic level and it gets higher sugar level building up. Because of the alcohol, it also gives a rounder body to the wine. So we can make a guess from the alcohol level. When we see the wines, the alcohol level is from 11 degree to 12 degree. We can guess the style of the wine is quite crispy, fresh, with lighter body. For the same theory, if we see the alcohol level is more than 13.5, which is quite high, then we can guess the style is stronger, less acidic, with a rounder body. Coming to number 5. Classifications. So let's start with the term clue or growth. The term is often used to describe a specific vineyard or collection of vineyards and the wine produced from these vineyards. The most prodigious of these are Premier Cru and Grand Cru, and we can also call first growth or the great growth, depends on the region. I have a question for you. Do you think the wine must be incredible if you see the Grand Cru in the label? The answer is no. It can be something incredible and it can be not. Depends on the regions. In Burgundy, Grand Cru is the highest level of the region's AOP wines. The Burgundy vineyards that have achieved this Grand Cru designation are those which produce the region's very best wine, and they make up just 2% of the Burgundy's vineyards by area. Premier Cru comes in the next. In Bordeaux, things get a lot more complicated. For the Medoc on the left bank and the Clave appellations, the highest classification is Premier Cru or first growth, followed by the second growth, third growth, and so on. In Clave, there's also another classification called Cru Classique. On the right bank of Bordeaux in Saint-Emilion, they do things a little differently. The most prestigious title is Premier Grand Cru Classé A, followed by Premier Grand Cru Classé B. And then is Grand Cru Classic. And just the designation of Grand Cru in Saint-Emilion is very common to see and is completely different thing from Burgundy. You will also see wines labeled as village. This simply designates a superior wine that comes from a more limited area than the generic appellation. Above the village level are wines with individual village names above this, are the villages that have their own AOC classification. As in different regions, there are also different designations. So as a beginner, I will recommend you to double check on internet so you can make sure if a cru is prestigious or not. And the last important component in a French wine label is organic. In French, is biologique. An organic wine is a wine made from cultivated grapes and whose vinification respects the principle of organic farming. In the vineyard, the use of fertilizers or chemicals is prohibited. In the cellar, to vinify this type of wine, only olological inputs of natural origins are authorized. In France, EcoCert is the label recognized. Sometimes we can also see some labels regarding the biodynamic. Biodynamics represents a method of farming based around a specific astronomic calendar. Biodynamic wine is made with a set of farming practices that views the farm or the vineyard as one solid organism. The ecosystem functions as a whole, with each portion of the farm or vineyard contributing to the next. The idea is to create a self-sustaining system. Natural materials, soils, and compost are used to sustain the vineyard. And when the wines are certified for biodynamic, we can see the labels like this. Here I also share some of the meanings of the vocabulary that we always see in the labels. Thank you for still being here. In this video until now, we have talked about several important components in the French wine label and what does it indicate. So I hope you learned something today and it can be useful for you. If you have any question or inquiry, leave it in the comments. I hope you like this video, and if you do, please leave it a like. And if you want to see more videos in the future, please follow the channel. So I will see you next week. Bye bye!